morning, gentlemen. Do sit. And smoke if you want. Now, let me see. You're for the prosecution, Mr. Golding.
Yes, sir.
You, Mr. Dealey, for the boy. And you, Mr. Parsons, are for the old lad.
Yes, Judge.
Now, I wanted to see you, to see if we can't do something about this case before it starts. Something's worrying me. I mean, here we have an old lag and a young foundling boy, both facing 2 serious charges. Now, the old lag, Mr. Parsons, has a list of convictions which I couldn't start to count without an adding machine. And even though they may be kept from the jury, the evidence is pretty strong against him. Now, what concerns me is that if this case is fought, this young boy is going to be dragged down by his connection with Smith. And 2 serious convictions against a boy of his tender years, well, that's not exactly a good start in life. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
Yes. I imagine that the police would be satisfied and indeed are only interested to get a conviction against Smith.
Well, the boy's fingerprints were found on the weapon used on Mrs. Richards.
Yes, my question was whether the police would be satisfied if Smith were convicted.
Well, I haven't asked them, Judge, but I would certainly withdraw the charges against the boy if Smith pleaded guilty.
Ah. Then the ball is now in your court, Mr. Parsons.
Well, Judge, that cause did occur to me, and I did suggest to my client that if he pleaded guilty, I might be able to get the charges dropped against the boy, but he'd have nothing to do with it.
That's a pity. And, of course, this whole trial is at the public expense, you know.
Well, not quite, Judge. I am instructed privately. In fact, Smith paid my instructing solicitor in cash from a suitcase full of notes. And what's more, wanted to pay for the boy's costs as well, but we thought it better if he was represented separately, which of course meant legal aid.
Yes, I see.
The real point is, Judge, that Smith is very fond of this boy and is determined to fight any moves to have him taken away from him.
What's the boy's attitude towards all this?
I don't know, Judge.
You don't know. Haven't you spoken to it?
Well, as you'll have seen from this report, he's refused to speak to the staff at his school, he's refused to speak to the probation officer, and he's refused to speak to me.
Did he say nothing to you at all?
Yes, he did. He said, don't bother to ask me any questions because I'm not going to talk.
Did you ask him why?
Yes. He said that Smith had told him not to talk.
Have they seen each other since they were arrested?
No, Judge. Smith did ask to see the boy, but permission was refused.
Yes, and of course they were arrested some months ago, weren't they? You know, one point puzzles me, Mr. Dealey. You say the boy wouldn't talk to you. Then how was it that I was informed that he intended to plead not guilty?
Ah, well, the position is this, that I've assumed that since he's remained silent for so long, that he will continue to do so. That when the charge is put to him, he'll say nothing, remain mute.
Oh, I do hope not, Mr. Dealey. Because if he stands mute, that means we shall have to impanel a special jury to decide whether or not he is being mute of malice. Further waste of time and public money.
Precisely. And since the boy obviously does understand what this case is about, then his silence would be malicious. And therefore the plea would be one of not guilty.
Well, I can only hope that he'll start talking again when he's reunited with Smith. You're sure your client won't change his plea, Mr. Parsons?
No, Judge. He intends to plead not guilty.
Very well, then we shall just have to get on with it as it is. Will you ask everyone to come in, please? Thank you, gentlemen.
What's the point of asking my client to plead not guilty? Because he thinks he is not guilty. He claims it was self-defense. Always has been.
All stand. Bring up the prisoners.
Before the boy is brought up, my lord, there is an application I would like to make.
Yes, Mr. Golding?
Here, where's Leo?
He is being brought up.
As prosecutor, my lord, my duty is, of course, to assist in achieving a fair trial. And in my submission, it would be wrong in principle for the boy to be placed in the dock with the adult accused.
Never.
Quiet. Mr. Smith, you are represented by counsel. He will speak for you. Please remain silent.
Your Worship, I know I should keep my mouth shut, but me and Leo, we've been separated all this time. And I've been looking forward to this trial, and knowing that Leo and me would be sitting together in the dock for a few days. And now he gets up and says the boy can't sit with me.
Now, Mr. Smith, I have let you have your say, but from now on I want no further interruptions. Your counsel, Mr. Parsons, will look after your interests. Let him speak for you. He is very experienced in these matters.
Yes, well, I done a bit of talking myself in my time, Your Worship.
No doubt, Mr. Smith, but this is one of these occasions when it is better to leave the talking to someone else. Now sit down. Now, Mr. Golding, why is it wrong for the boy to sit in the dock with Smith?
My lord, it will give Smith an opportunity to talk with the boy. It provides him with an opportunity to influence the boy.
Mr. Dealey?
My lord, if it emerges that the boy's conduct or evidence is influenced by the other accused, then my learned friend can comment on it. But I must confess I've never heard of such an application before.
Mr. Parsons?
My lord, this application is, in my submission, quite absurd and completely novel. In every case where there are two accused, they're allowed to sit in the box together, and they have an opportunity to talk to each other. This has never been considered a ground for making them sit apart. It would be most unfair to treat my client in any way differently from any other co-accused.
Mr. Golding, have you anything to add to that?
No, my lord.
Then I reject the application. I do not consider there is any basis for treating this trial any differently from any other trial where two persons are jointly accused.
Good on you, Gov.
Smith, I warn you, if you disobey me again, I can have you removed from the court.
I'm sorry, Your Worship. I didn't mean to speak out so loud so you hear. But, yeah, there's something else I want to say. Now, before we get started...
You cannot. You have instructed counsel, and he will make any representations that he thinks are necessary on your behalf.
Yes, well, I'm sure he speaks very well, but there's some things a man's got to say for himself. So I think I'll do without him for the time being.
What you mean? Withdraw his instructions. Dismiss him. That would be most unwise.
Yes, well, I think I'll do without him just the same.
My lord, I think in the circumstances I'd better withdraw.
Smith, this would be most unwise.
Yes, well, I know a thing or two about this caper, Your Worship.
Very well, if that's what you want. You had better go, Mr. Parsons. That is, of course, if you want to.
Thank you, my lord.
Ask Mr. Parsons to stick around for a while because I might want him later on.
Well, Smith, when you're ready, perhaps you'd like to say to us whatever it is that your counsel could not say.
Yes, I'm sorry, Your Worship.
Yes, well, what is it?
Well, it is a complaint, sir.
Yes?
Yeah. Well, it's about Leo's legal representation. Now, look, me and Leo, we're not paupers, and we don't want no favours. We're not like immigrants or layabouts or old-age pensioners who haven't put enough aside for a rainy day.
Come to the point.
Well, I'm doing my best, Your Worship. Now, when Leo was arrested, I wanted to do the proper thing. A QC from London and all that because nothing's too good for this boy. But they won't let me see him. They won't let me see him. They won't let me do anything. And he ends up with a bleeding junior on the National Health.
Now, Smith, you may rest assured that your boy is ably and properly represented. It matters not to counsel whether they be privately instructed or whether they are doing it for legal aid. All that has happened is that you have saved your money.
Yes, well, it's a bloody liberty, that's what it is. Now, not letting me speak to him, not letting me pay him, not letting me have anything to do with him, a bloody liberty, that's what it is. Forcing second-rate charity down our bleeding throats.
Mr. Smith, the boy is in the care of the local authority.
Yes, and he was in my bleeding care, wasn't he, before the Roberts come along on his naughty bike and nipped him?
Now, Smith, the boy is in the care of the local authority and they have made all the necessary arrangements and that is all that there is to it. I must add that I think it is highly commendable of you to want to pay for the boy's legal representation, but please do not waste any more time. There is really nothing more to be said. Now, do you understand?
Knowing an egg is rotten don't make it taste no better, Your Worship.
Mr. Smith, the law allows you to think what you like, but not to say what you like. Now, please, there is nothing more to argue about. Do you understand? Very well. Have the boy brought up.
My lord.
Yes, Mr. Parsons?
Apparently Mr. Smith has changed his mind and wishes me to conduct his case after all.
Oh, very well. I suppose we shall have to accept the fact that he has had a change of mind. But I do hope that your client understands that he is not at liberty to take over the case every other 5 minutes. Either you conduct it or he does it entirely without you.
That point has been emphasized to him, my lord.
Very good, Mr. Parsons.
Hello, Leo. cool. Hey, kept the old wagger up, have you? Yeah, don't worry about this lot, son. But we'll soon get out of this, won't we? You leave it to old Jackie. We'll show them a thing or two, won't we?
Stand up, please. Leo Trotsky, is that your name?
Yes, mister.
Jack Smith, is that your name?
Yes, sir.
Leo Trotsky and Jack Smith, you were charged on this indictment with 2 counts. On the first count, that you jointly, on the 12th day of May, 1973, having entered as trespassers a building or premises known as Apple Trees, Apsley, in the county of Fulchester, stole therein a quantity of copper piping to the value of £150. Leo Trotsky, to that charge do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Smith?
Not guilty.
On the second count, it is charged that you jointly on the 12th day of May, 1973, assaulted Irene Richards, thereby occasioning her actual bodily harm. Leo Trotsky, on that second count, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Smith?
Not guilty.
You may be seated.